Hello and welcome, my name is Mike, and in this whole video we're going to talk about a Fitbit. Yeah, this thing. It's not mine, and I think it's broken. I don't own a Fitbit. I'm probably not terribly healthy, but you know what? Neither is this story. But what's truly interesting is how a Fitbit can save your life. Or rather, save you from getting life. So, let's look at the story of Nicole Vanderheyden. Shall we? After you. Roll the title. This video's story's case takes us all the way to Manitowoc. Probably butchered that. Wisconsin. Population about 33,000. I'm not making that up. Sitting on Lake Michigan. So that's all there really is to say about Manitowoc. Oh, they do have a Sputnik Fest. Hey, seems rad. It's held in September when they celebrate the fact that a piece of the Russian spaceship Sputnik 4, upon re-entry, a piece of it landed in downtown Manitowoc in 1962. And this is where old Nicole Vanderheyden was born, and she was born in 1985. She graduated high school in 2003 and went on to study at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, and got herself a Bachelor's of Science degree with a double major in Science and Education. She then went on to dedicate 6 years of her life as a substitute teacher for the Green Bay area public school system. However, Nikki was a mother first. That's what was importante to her. She would go on to have 3 kids, and by all accounts was one of those mothers who was real good. She also loved the outdoors and being fit and all, though she wouldn't be the one to have the Fitbit. I mean, not in this story at least. I mean, she may have had a Fitbit. Let's move on. Nicole Vanderheyden met Douglas Detrie in January 2015, and they hit it off pretty quick. A few weeks after they started dating, Nikki got preggo, and in March 2015, she filed a paternity suit naming Doug Detrie as the baby daddy. Nikki had 2 children from a previous relationship and shared custody with her ex-husband. And so Nikki and Doug and all the kids lived together just outside of Green Bay in Ledgeview. Now one night, a friend of Nikki and Doug, a fellow named Greg, he convinced them, hey guys, we should get out there. Go out, have a few sups, have a good time, Their baby, Dylan, he was, 6 months old, and Nikki hadn't really gotten out of the house so much, so she needed to, let the goose loose. And so they all decided to go out on May 20th, 2016. They managed to get Nikki's mother to look after baby Dylan. Nikki's 2 older children were with their dad, so Nikki's mother would babysit for a few hours until a friend of Nikki's, name of Dallas Kennedy, finished her shift at work and then agreed to take over the babysitting. By the way, her parents obviously had a kooky sense of humor. And so Nikki, Doug and friends went out into Green Bay and headed over to a bar called The Watering Hole at about 8 p.m. where, get this, Steel Panther were playing! I know these guys are kind of like a joke act, but really? Well, by all accounts, it seems like Nikki and Doug had a grand old time. Somehow, and took a selfie even. Look, smiling, though that could be a grimace. Now those who were with Nikki said she was just slamming them down, while others were still on their first beer. She was chugging down her second. She needed to let loose. There's another joke there I could make at Steel Panther's expense, but I'm sure they're fun. So the gig ended at about 11 p.m. And this is when things take a turn. Some old friends of Doug and Greg, high school friends, ended up popping by the waterhole, and Doug and Greg were like, hey buddies, let's have a few drinks. While the other members of their group, and Nikki, decided to go on to another bar called the Sardine Can. Doug and Greg were like, yeah, follow you over. Nikki wasn't too pleased about this. Shortly after 11 p.m, when the group had separated, Nikki started sending some, angry texts to Doug. Not pleasant. Remember though, she was pissed at the time. Pissed in both ways, angry and glug glug. So, what bitch you with? Fuck you, abusive asshole. Wow, what slut are you with? Because none of your friends know. Doug was like, aha, just calm down, just with the boys. Lol, stop. Be good, I'll see you at the Sardine Can. Now, Doug wouldn't end up going across to the Sardine Can for quite a long time. Him and the boys ended up snorting some Adderall and said they lost track of time. Nikki in the sardine can with the others was having a grand old time, drinking, dancing, but was getting more and more pissed off as time went by and Doug was not showing up. Then, when one of the other girls in the group called Doug and he answered her, Nikki blew a gasket because he wasn't answering her calls. Yikes, so Nikki stormed out of the place. Now, Nikki and Doug weren't all chocolate and cuddles. Their relationship had soured a bit. Doug was having trouble adjusting to the family life, having his own kid pretty suddenly with Nikki, who he hadn't been dating that long. And then she had 2 kids of her own. It was kind of like one of those, here's what I prepared earlier type of families, and Doug wasn't too keen on that. He wasn't sure if family life was for him. Nikki also had her suspicions and would accuse Doug of wanting to be with other women. Accusations that had some truth to them. Doug missed the bachelor life, and she was feeling neglected. So this turbulence kind of blew up when they were having a few drinks that night. As it would, you know yourself. So Nikki ran out of the sardine can away from the group, but one of the members of the group, a friend of Doug's named Aaron Kulinski, ran after her, basically trying to calm her down. It was the middle of the night, she was drunk. He was like, here, listen, calm down, we'll get you home. Nikki was just pushing him away, screaming on the ground, roaring her head off. Aaron, people started looking, so Aaron was like, I'm out. And he left, and last he saw, she was walking away. At this time, about 20 past 12 a.m, Doug and Greg were finally getting ready to leave the watering hole and head to the sardine can. They popped out and Doug called Nikki while wandering over. She was hammered, barely intelligible, making no sense, and her phone eventually died. He had a text from her though, saying she'd met a friend. And he was like, sure she's grand, I'm sure she's sobering up somewhere. Doug ended up leaving the sardine can just after 2. Buddy Greg drove him back home to relieve Dallas Kennedy. Dallas Kennedy, the babysitter, by the way, she didn't really like Doug very much. She knew, Nikki and Doug were on the rocks, and she also knew that Doug had contemplated kicking Nikki and the babies out, which is shitty. So Dallas was going to leave now that one of the parents was home, but she was worried about Nikki, even at one point asking if Nikki was in the trunk of Greg's car. Wow, what a thing to ask. She eventually left. Doug went to bed at about 3 a.m, got up at 6 a.m. to give a bottle to baby Dylan, and went back to sleep, getting up about 11 a.m. Nikki was still a no-show. Now, at this point, he still thought she was sleeping it off at a friend's place, and would show up at some point. But he started texting Dallas, Greg, Nikki's sister Heather, asking if they'd seen her. At one point, he even sent her a Snapchat to check if she'd open it. She didn't. So they all started to worry a little bit. Like Nikki, even though she was pissed at Doug, she was still, a very caring mother. She would be back for the baby Dylan. So, yeah, they all started being like, where the hell is she? They started calling around hospitals, asking around if anybody had seen her. And then eventually on May 21st, Doug called 911 at 4:30 p.m. to report her missing.
Who's missing?
It's my girlfriend, and she does live with me, and she's never done this before.
What's her name?
Nicole Vanderheyden.
So she was on foot?
Yes.
No idea where she might go?
No idea. I called some friends.
Did she have a cell phone with her or anything?
Yeah, and it's been off since last night.
At about 1:54 p.m, about 2.5 hours earlier, another 911 call was made.
We just found a human body laying in some weeds.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Is the person beyond help, or do I need to give instructions for CPR?
No, it's beyond help.
About 3 miles away, 2 teenagers found the body of a naked woman. It was Nikki. Police didn't know it was her until Doug's report, or guess it was at least. She had been brutally beaten. They had to check her dental records. She had suffered 241 injuries and had been strangled, possibly with an electrical cord that was found with blood on it. She had facial injuries, a fractured jaw, injuries to the genital area suggesting sexual assault, ligature, strangulation marks, blunt force trauma. With bruises to her hands and broken fingernails, it was clear Nikki had fought hard before being overpowered. When she was found, she only had socks on, as well as the concert bracelet from the night before. Of course, Doug and Nikki's family had no idea, and when the police rock up to Doug's at about 5 p.m, They already think they might have solved this missing persons case, but they don't mention it to Doug, obviously. An officer secretly recorded Doug with a key fob camera. Doug was described as pale and hungover, obviously. He showed no signs of any injury to his face, arms, or legs, and was generally cooperative with the officer's questions. He volunteered his phone for them to check his messages and whatnot. However, after they left, Heather, Nikki's sister who was there, got a text saying a body had been found, and they started to become anxious as to who it was. Later that day, towards midnight, the police asked Doug to go with them to the sheriff's office.
The first people we talk to are the people that are, closest to whoever's missing or deceased, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's totally normal for us to be talking to you.
I assume so, yeah.
And Greg and Aaron and everybody else that was there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, your whole group of friends are the last people that she was with for the most part.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do not suspect.
And she did not come home at all last night after you got
Not at all. There wasn't a lip or word from her.
Okay. She never stepped foot into that house after
No,
you got
not that it would have been. No, she didn't. She would have came and went to bed. And I woke up to Dylan crying, so.
And you don't know where she is or what happened to her?
Not a clue.
Did you do anything to cause her to go missing?
No, not at all. Besides being on the phone,
Yeah. Well, I think what we're looking at is this body that was found, okay, down the street. I don't think it's been 100% identified as her, but there's a lot of similarities.
What happened?
Well, I don't know.
That's what we're trying to figure out here.
That's what we don't know.
Is there anything else that you can think of that would be helpful to us in this?
I'm going to talk to everybody on that frickin' street in that neighborhood. I need to do it.
Well, that's part of what we're going to do too. Obviously we can't go do it at 2:30 in the morning. Is there anything in your house that they're going to find that's gonna say you had anything to do with this?
Absolutely nothing whatsoever.
Okay.
Nothing. I have nothing to do with this. It's just...
He denied any involvement in his partner's disappearance and gave the police permission to search his house, and was told what the police had found. A few hours later, his parents picked him up, and Doug started to realise the cops had him as suspect numero uno. Doug then spoke to the family lawyer and refused to give a DNA sample, and waited for a warrant before he let them search the place. However, the police did find blood near the couple's home, clumps of blonde hair, bobby pins, and came to the conclusion that Nikki had been murdered near their home, and had been transported to where she was found. Police soon took Doug into custody, and he was arrested on suspicion of first-degree murder.
Right now I'm going to be taking you into custody. I'm going to be handcuffing you.
Okay.
So just be cooperative with me.
All right.
And we'll roll it that way.
Wow, okay.
I'm a decent guy.
Okay, I'm a decent guy too.
I get that, I'm sure you are.
DNA swabs were taken from Nikki's body and sent for analysis. Continuing their search, the police found more bloody clothing, her purse and other bits and bobs just off a highway. Doug's house was searched, his car, Nikki's car, Greg's car, everything. Shoe prints were found on Nikki's body, which matched shoes found in Doug's home. Those found in Doug's home had blood spots, and blood was also found in the garage.
Ledgeview man is charged with murdering his girlfriend. 34-year-old Douglas Detrie now facing first-degree intentional homicide for the death of Nicole Vanderheyden. You remember Nicole's body was found in a ditch Saturday. Investigators later found blood in the home the couple shared in Ledgeview.
The district attorney not releasing a criminal complaint today, but in court, Detrie's defense attorney arguing that apparent blood stains found near Detrie and Vanderheyden's home that appeared to be wiped up, dirt and more stains found in a car, and a pattern found on Vanderheyden's body matching a pair of tennis shoes Detrie owned wasn't enough evidence to hold him in jail. The district attorney arguing otherwise, and in court statements that Vanderheyden's body was found strangled and bludgeoned to death, eventually persuaded the judge to hold Detrie in jail.
Things were not looking good for Doug. Until more analysis came back in August 2016. The blood found on the shoe, that wasn't blood. The blood found in the garage was turkey blood. And the DNA found on Nikki matched. Not Doug. It matched a man named George Burch. Who was he? A real piece of shit, that's who. George Birch was born in 1978 in Virginia. At an early age, he was named Big Country because he was tall. Still an odd nickname, but Big Country would end up 6'7", 270 pounds. In 1998, he was tried for the murder of Joey White, a gang leader in Denby, Virginia. Joey led the Hood's mob gang and reportedly hated George. Joey and his friends twice beat up George. It seems there was some kind of gunfight, and after George was arrested, he would be found not guilty when it came to trial. George had been sentenced also in 1998 for burglary and had to be kept in custody for his own safety, lest the Hood's mob gang get him. And he also faced a felony charge for carrying a firearm. And so, to get away, he moved to New York with his wife, and they had 2 kids. After the marriage fell apart, he moved to Green Bay for a fresh start, after contacting a friend who lived there named Ed Jackson. He lived with them, everything seemed grand. He even got himself a girlfriend 18 years his junior. So the police checked his background not long after they got his DNA, which was found on Nikki's sock, and found recently, after the murder, he'd been involved in a hit and run and also torched his own car. Police also got his cell phone data and found some interesting information as to what he was up to the night of Nikki's murder. His phone had pinged in all the places involved in the murder of Nicole Vanderheyden, and he was also very interested in researching the case. His phone pinged to shit all around where she was found and her items were found. So when the police come knocking on his door, he needs to think of something like fast.
The reason here is into, in reference to a homicide investigation into Nicole Vanderheyden. Okay? So, is this something that you want to talk to me about?
Sure.
And so he has a fantastic tale to tell the police. From all his Googling, he knew Doug was a suspect and had been arrested on suspicion. So he was like, you know what? It was Doug. George's story to the police, right, was like, okay, I was in all those places, you got me fair and square with the techno-doodly. But Big Country was only in those places because Doug Detrie made me in those places. Big Country said that he met Nikki that night at another bar, Richard Cranium's, which is a pretty good name, and they started hooking up. They then got into his car, stopped by his place for a condom, and then went to her place to get it on. However, when they arrived, they apparently started doing the deed in the car because the home was occupado. Then, Big Country says, Doug came storming out of the house and beat the piss out of him. And when he woke up, Nikki was dead. Doug then forced Big Country, at gunpoint no less, to get her body, put it in the car, we're going to drive 3 miles down the road, and dump the body. At gunpoint the entire time. George said then that, they dumped the body in a field, and he pushed Doug down a ravine and drove off. And in a panic, he threw all of Nikki's shit out of the car. That was the story, and Big Country was sticking to it. Probably shouldn't have, as it was deemed unbelievable, and he was arrested in September 2016.
Developments tonight in the murder investigation of alleged woman. A suspect now faces charges for the murder of 31-year-old Nicole Vanderheyden. 38-year-old George Burch appeared in court today on one charge of first-degree intentional homicide.
At trial, though, that's what the defense were all about. Big Country was forced to by Doug. Doug was the real killer.
At the end of this trial, we will give you all of the pieces. You will be able to solve the puzzle. You will know the whole story, and you will know that this was not some random act as the state just described. You will know that Douglas Detrie, Nicole's boyfriend, murdered Nicole. This is George Birch. George Birch is a human being just like me and you. He's a United States citizen, and he's protected by the United States Constitution, the Wisconsin Constitution, and other laws that are designed to restrain the government's authority. This table, there are humans here, But this table is occupied by the government of the state of Wisconsin. They don't represent any particular individual. They represent the government interests as they see fit in this matter. As you've already heard, George is presumed innocent. As he sits here right now, he is considered innocent of this crime. He will remain innocent unless they can convince you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that he murdered Nicole.
Doug was also smaller than Big Country, and although he had a conceal and carry permit, he didn't own a gun. Though, of course, the defense pointed to his unhappiness with the relationship and the possible existence of an unregistered weapon.
At that point, everything was going smoothly.
Yes, sir.
You were having intercourse with her?
Yes, sir.
What ended up happening?
The next thing that I remember, apart from us having intercourse, was literally waking up on the ground outside the truck, laying in the grass curb area. I remember waking up and going, what in the hell? The first thing I heard was, don't even fucking think about it. There was a lot of blood on her face, come out of her mouth. The first thing I was coherent to me that I could hear them say was, look what the fuck you made me do.
Do you know who that individual is now?
Now I do.
Who was it?
It was that Detrie.
So at the start I mentioned a Fitbit, and this is where it comes into it. During the secret recording of Doug the police did when they went to him when Nikki was reported missing, Doug was wearing a Fitbit. That ended up in court as evidence. Prosecutors say the downloaded data from Doug's Fitbit shows he barely moved in the hours they believe Nikki was killed and left in the field 3 miles away. Now, the sleep data was ruled inadmissible in court, but the data measuring Detrie's footsteps was admissible, and Doug didn't take enough steps to run out of his house and commit a murder. Nor, after being driven to a field and getting knocked down by George, did Doug register enough steps to hike back home. But what if he wasn't wearing the Fitbit? It's possible, right? That when he got home he took it off and then did everything George said he did. But the Fitbit also picked him up doing like 20 to 30 steps at about 4 a.m, going to use the bathroom to take a piss. So it seems like he was wearing it that night. The day after the murder, George went off on a fishing trip with Ed Jackson. He went on with his life like nothing happened. Well, nothing will happen to him now, when, in March 2018, a jury found George guilty of first-degree intentional homicide after a 2-week trial.
He murdered Nicole. He murdered Nicole. He murdered Nicole.
His attempt to throw Doug under the bus was unsuccessful. Big Country was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, Doug is no saint. In February 2017, the sister of Nikki, Heather, and Doug went to a birthday party and were driving together when Doug touched her leg in a sexual manner, the criminal complaint says. Heather told him, please don't, and Doug got angry. He drove at high speeds and refused her pleading to stop and let her out. At one point he ran a stoplight and he only stopped and let her out when she started kicking his windshield. A judge decided to withhold judgment on the felonies until October 21st, 2019. If Doug adheres to the conditions of his bond, mainly staying out of bars and trouble, the felonies will be dismissed. And so they were. Now, this isn't the only time a Fitbit or something like a Fitbit solved a case. In 2018, 90-year-old Anthony Aiello told police that he last saw his stepdaughter, Karen Navarra, 5 days before her body was discovered by a co-worker, and that he had been at her house for a brief visit and to drop off homemade pizza and biscotti. What he didn't realise was that Navarra's Fitbit recorded her heart rate spiking significantly around 3:20 p.m. on September 8, when he was at her house, and stopping completely shortly after. He was charged with her murder. In April 2018, Apple Watch data narrowed the window of time to a 7-minute period, during which the heart rate of Myrna Nilsson, who was murdered in Australia in 2016, increased while she was being attacked, when it slowed when she lost consciousness and then stopped when she died. This contradicted the story her daughter-in-law, Caroline Nilsson, told police about Myrna arguing with a group of men for 20 minutes after a road rage incident. Caroline was charged with her mother-in-law's murder. The trial is still ongoing. In 2015, Richard DeBate's wife, Connie, died. He told police that he was at home when a masked intruder broke in and tied him to a chair, and then shot Connie as she entered the house through the garage, on her way home from a workout. She was wearing a Fitbit. Investigators used the home alarm system, both of the DeBate cell phones, and Connie's Fitbit to contradict Richard's account of the crime. The two most damning data points were that her phone was connected to their home Wi-Fi, uploading photos to Facebook shortly before she was killed, or rather when she was supposedly being confronted by a masked gunman. And also her Fitbit showed she walked a distance of 1,217 feet in the approximately 40 minutes before the movement stops. If she'd only walked from her car to the basement, where she died, the device would only have recorded 125 feet during that time. He's currently on trial for her murder. So there you have it. Thanks to, modern technology, no more big country for big country. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I will see you as always real soon in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Mike out.